Oh, hey! Sorry, I was just playing one of my favorite games, Tale of the Sun. Despite not having any clue what the hell I'm supposed to be doing in the game, I still think it's got it where it counts in the aesthetics department, and just how much personality is dripping from the screen with this weird little game. Actually, I'm glad that you decided to drop by today. I've been a little lonely down in the dungeon playing video games by myself for the last forever, and I needed someone to ramble to about my video game collection and the importance of physical media. Hey, where are you going? Hello? No? Come on. You came into my house, okay? So unfortunately for you, you're stuck with me for the time being. I'm sorry. If you haven't been able to tell by this point, I rather enjoy video games. Alright, well, I always have, but the last few years in particular have seen quite an expansion in that enjoyment. As much as I've always loved games, though, it hasn't been a perfect relationship. For those of you who haven't been following me for a super long time, I used to make Gmod videos with my friends for a living. We ran from so many goddamn next bots.
You spawned into hell, man, run!
I did that for a really long time, and despite complaining about it a lot behind closed doors, I do look back on that chapter of my life quite fondly. The only real downside was playing the same game day after day really took its toll on me and my relationship with video games. The worst part was I wasn't really playing it all those years for the sake of playing or enjoying it. It was creating videos and I needed to keep it up day in and day out. It really wears you out. Unfortunately, this caused me to fall out of love with gaming for many years. Some titles would come along and hold my attention for a little while, but it was sparse for sure. Opening Steam became almost exhausting. Nothing seemed to jump out at me anymore. Fast forward to early 2022. My old pal Zach orders a few Pokemon games for his Game Boy Advance. You know, those really cool ones with the translucent carts? From there, he and I got to talking about games we grew up with, and before you know it, I started becoming more and more interested in them again. I thought, the pandemic's finally beginning to wane a bit, and I've got a good job, so why not look into getting some of my own childhood games, and maybe beginning a small collection of my own? But where to start? Well, I figured a good place to start would be a local used game store like this one. Boy, was I right to start here, because within seconds of walking through the front door, I saw it, a PlayStation 3. But not just any PlayStation 3. The Day 1 CECH-A01 serial number variant. In less nerdy terms, this was the PlayStation 3 that had full backwards compatibility because they stuffed the PS2 board into the sucker. It made it the ultimate PlayStation, but it also gave it the ultimate price tag.
The 60GB PlayStation 3 for $599 US, $659 Canadian.
Nonetheless, I always considered this to be the best console of all time. One console, thousands upon thousands of games that you could pop in and run with. To make a long story short, I had to take it home. And a PS2 game to boot. There's just something extra magical about seeing the PlayStation 2 logo pop up on a PlayStation 3. I do not know how to explain it, it just hits a little different for me. From there, the snowball began to roll down the hill, and as you can see, I never stopped snagging games. Once I had the ones I grew up with, I figured I might as well continue to get some I never had the chance to ever even try. From Katamari to Haunting Ground and even Linux, I started grabbing games all the time. Complete in box, of course. Who do you take me for? I'm not here for loose discs, I need the whole thing. Ever onward I continued, and the rest is history. I still have holy grails to add to my ever-growing collection, like Mizurna Falls or LSD Dream Emulator, and I'd certainly love to have every console in the future. Yes, one of every console. Except for maybe the Nintendo PlayStation prototype unit that exists out there somewhere. Maybe if I become a billionaire in the future, but for now, I won't worry about it. My collection is small, but it's mine. Key word there, mine. It belongs to me, and no one can take it from me. Except for maybe a cartoon burglar who's wearing a ski mask and has a big old burlap sack with a dollar sign on the front of it. So many industries have been going down the road of completely digitizing as much as possible, and while that's certainly more convenient in so many ways, it also presents many serious problems in regards to ownership. When Netflix came up with a new way to print money back in 2007 with streaming, I was just as on board as everyone else. being able to push a button and watch a movie was cool as hell.
Netflix now delivers unlimited movies 2 ways, instantly to your TV, plus DVDs by mail.
And today, thanks to services like Game Pass, the experience of finding and choosing a game to play has never been easier. And honestly, well worth the money when you consider how many big games have dropped day one on the service. It's very undeniable that it has value. But what if you don't want to subscribe to another thing? Another thing that, should you want to keep access to all those titles, requires payment forever? What if you just want to buy individual games like before? Well, luckily, new games are still being put out there physically, for now, and the used market certainly exists despite many games being expensive enough to give you a heart attack. Also, hey, there's so many digital storefronts that have huge amounts of games to purchase individually, right? Well, as it turns out, the vast majority of titles made before 2010 just aren't available. The Video Game History Foundation did a study that showed, quote, just 13% of video game history is being represented in the current marketplace. In fact, no period of video game history defined in this study even cracked 20% representation. I feel like most of us forget just how many video games there are, or how many have been made. My little collection here probably accounts for 0.002% of all games that had been made, or at least the number we estimate that had been made. It's actually insane to me that so much art is inaccessible to the average person. And when I say average person, I don't mean someone who's too lazy to go hunting for a good deal, or too dumb to set up emulation and find games online. Take Tale of the Sun here. If you wanted to play this game, you could head over to eBay and find a disc for anywhere from 20 to 40 bucks, and so long as you had a PS1 or an external DVD drive from Walmart and a YouTube tutorial, you'd be set. However, there's no reason this game should be that much. You might hear $20 to $40 and think, well, that's not bad. But others might hear it and think, well, that's not bad. Not to say that Tale of the Sun is completely unavailable. There are ways to get a hold of it, and maybe even play it without downloading anything, but it should not come down to individuals to have to pick up the slack for companies that are well known for making and having fuck tons of money. All the while, they're firing people who absolutely did not deserve it, and more often than not are the reason they're making that money in the first place. I haven't been around a very long time. I'm 28 years old, so my experience is going to be far more limited than the folks who grew up to see the beginning of this art form. Despite being young, I don't feel as though my experience is any less than. I'm just saying, it sucks to hear about the video game crash from the 80s and see that it might be happening again right now. History's kind of repeating itself, but it seems almost worse. Again, I don't know, I wasn't there, that's just what it's feeling like. I've finally fallen back in love with video games again. I've been playing them on and off for decades, and it sucks to see just how bad things have gotten for this industry. The rough patch it's going through right now is wild. It seems like for every win the industry gets, it receives an equally as large loss. Woo! Record profits this quarter. Oh, by the way, you're probably gonna get fired next month. Maybe tomorrow? Deep breaths. I don't want to get too heated about the situation at the moment. The commodification of video games is nothing new, but it feels as though within the last decade or so, publishers have been doing whatever they can, whenever they can, to keep stuff hidden or just take things away. Look at Ubisoft. Not long after their head of subscriptions, yeah, real title, said that customers should get comfortable with not owning their games, the company would suddenly shut down and revoke licenses for The Crew, an online-only driving MMO. This is not an insignificant game by any means. From a press kit I found online, they lauded this franchise as being one of their biggest and strongest, with over 21 million players since its launch. And from what I've heard, 12 million of which were just for that first game. This game has a campaign, for crying out loud. Apparently, a pretty lengthy one as well, as it was estimated to run up to 20 hours long. Yet, it was online only for some reason, so now it's completely unplayable and unavailable. Why the fuck am I not able to play the campaign for this game anymore? You know, obviously this has become a pretty large issue, so large in fact that it's ruffled a lot of feathers and riled a lot of people up. Ross Scott from Accursed Farms got so riled, as a matter of fact, he has spoken to lawyers from several countries and begun petitioning governments planet-wide in an attempt to curb this bullshit practice from not just Ubisoft, but all publishers who would attempt to sell you a game and think they have the right to take it back at any point or destroy it because it's no longer making them money.
The video game industry has a lot of problems. Like, a lot of problems. I think regulators have no idea, actually. But there's one problem in particular I've been hating for decades, and it's getting worse and worse. And that is destroying video games so that no one can ever play them again.
None of this is to say he or I think that a publisher should be required to run a game literally forever. What this is about is that a game, no matter how beloved or not, should never be in danger of being taken away from those who paid for it. Or hell, a game should never be in danger of being taken away in general. Ross states in his video that it might be debatable that video games are art, but it's undeniable that they contain it. I can kind of get what he's saying, but overall I would argue that they are all art, as long as it makes you feel something, even if that thing is disappointment or any other negative emotion. All of this crap is subjective, but what isn't subjective is how shittily games, those that created the games, and those that enjoy the games and paid for them are being treated by the industry at large. Or maybe not even at large, maybe it's just the suits. I don't know, I'm not in that industry, but I am really pissed off with how, as a whole, it seems to be treating some of the most important parts of the industry. If you like or respect video games as an art form even a little bit, I urge you to head over to Accursed Farms and check out what Ross has been doing to see if there's anything at all that you can do to help. It is a long shot, but I would be remiss if I didn't at least try to do something. I know that a lot of people out there have been yammering on about physical media the last couple of years in particular, and I wanted to throw my hat in the ring for you guys today. We want to own the things that we buy. That's really what it comes down to. And luckily, all the people that do collect this stuff are going to be in a pretty good position to make sure that they always have access to their favorite things, no matter what a company does down the line. Even if disc rot were to destroy every game I owned, because I own them, I have the legal right to digitize them as I have for the future. So, while this original hardware might go bye-bye, and the discs also might go bye-bye, I've got copies of everything because they are mine and I have the right to do that. Video games, movies, shows, everything in between, they're all incredibly important, and I really hope as time goes on we can continue to strike, or begin to strike, a significantly better balance between the convenience of digital and being able to own what you've purchased. I understand that with storefronts like Steam, you don't really own those copies necessarily either, but at least on that platform, if something is delisted from the store, it is not removed from your library. I have not been able to find a case of that online, and if it has happened, it's probably so rare it doesn't even matter. The direction we're going right now is pretty rough looking ahead, but there are some great people out there that are doing everything they can to make sure that no matter what, we're always going to have access to as much stuff as they can possibly give us, despite companies doing their best to make things worse and more difficult for everyone. I've said my piece for now, so I'm going to get back to running around in circles in Tale of the Sun. Maybe one day I'll be able to figure out what the hell I'm supposed to do in order to progress. I'd like to thank you guys for stopping by. You can show yourselves out. Make sure to grab a gift bag from Zach while you're up there, and if there aren't any left, well then, it sucks to suck.